it might seem counterintuitive, but now's a great time to scale, right? Like if there's a lot of people, whenever like the demand for work drops in the industry, then loads of freelancers decide, oh shit, I've got to go get a job now, or I want something more stable or whatever. And then suddenly the labor market massively increases, and like the cost of labor goes down and the quality of labor goes up. So like if you know that you're going to be suddenly getting really busy in August, hire somebody in June, spend a month training them, making sure you're sure you're super happy with them, and then when the tide comes back in, you've built like a massive fucking sandcastle. Whereas like if you don't do that, and then you suddenly try and hire people, for instance, for us, because whenever the demand increases, we have to hire more people in house. Like that's a nightmare. We've then got to spend like a month training someone, and that takes extra effort to train them in the first place. So initially you have even less time. And if you've done that when there's a massive hike in required output, then you're really going to struggle. So yeah, when the tide's out, like build a load of stuff, build a load of shit. And then when the tide comes back in, then you'll have the sickest sandcastle on the beach. I don't know. That I'm so proud of that metaphor. It's changed my whole life. I'm going to use that again.
It's like the buy low, sell high approach.
Literally.
The buy low, sell high approach of hiring talent.
Literally, it is the buy low. 100%. 100%. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. I can imagine like with during those busy times, like when all that output is coming in, you won't have the time to sit down with a new employee and really train them. You have to try to probably like put them through the ringer, and just let them kind of like get the work done. But yeah, no, it's a very smart move that you mentioned, that it's good when these smaller times where it's not as busy, that would be the time to hire. But then there's also that paradox, like, but you're not having as much cash flow at that point. Are you going to be able to afford to hire people at that point? It's like a paradox that you just have to kind of, I guess, over time, you will figure out how to kind of swallow it a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's scary. It's really scary. Like I most of our growth, a lot of our growth in the early days, I would attribute to just how aggressive I was with cash flow. Like we would operate with like a 2 to 3 week runway, and sometimes I'd be like, shit, like if we don't sell something in the next week, like I'm not gonna be able to pay salaries at the end of the month. Like whenever we hit zero on the bank account, I'd be like, cool, let's go spend some money. We've got an $8,000 overdraft. That means we've got like, the fact we're on zero means we've got money to go spend and like invest in the company. And I was just putting everything, I was earning like very little money. I was just putting everything that we earned like back into the business as aggressively as possible. Like during the worst periods of time, like I'd be waking up at like 1 o'clock in the morning and I'd be looking at my cash flow spreadsheet like, oh my God, this is so stressful. Like I'm so worried about how we're going to get through the next few weeks. But we always managed it. Like sometimes like I would have to sit down and be like, cool, we've not got any work for later this month. I'm going to do 2 weeks of telesales. And I would just sit on the phone for like 2 weeks all day, every day, ringing companies to generate the business. So yeah, it's really difficult to have that mindset, I think. And it causes challenges and stress elsewhere. And I think that just being the age I was and as naive as I was, it made me a lot more like capable of dealing with the situation. I'm not sure I could do it now, but yeah, I think it's a really good thing to do if you can kind of like sail the sea, if you can kind of weather the storm. That's what I'm looking for. If you can kind of weather the storm.
That's the mindset you gotta have if you want to do like aggressive growth, like how you did. Because for me, like just thinking about that had me stressed. Like I like to know I have a backup. So I even told Kirill, I'm like, look, if we want to grow, we got to make sure we got the cash in the account, this or that. But what you're doing is like that. People like you tend to grow massive companies because like that's what you got to do, right? You got to take those.
They're taking
those
the
risks.
risk. Yeah. We're trying to be a little bit on the safer side, but because of that, it's a slow burn, slow growth. But actually, I was curious because you mentioned that you did a lot of aggressive like outbound lead generation. Like trying to call up companies and things like that. Like, do you find a lot of success with that in that approach, or like how do you go about finding new business?
So at the time, it was okay. It was just more so that strategizing back in the day would be like, right, does this thing cost money? One side would be like, yes. And it'd be like, cool, well, we can't do it then because we don't have any money. And the other side will be no. And it'd be like, cool, well, we can do that. So like one of the things I did is I spent like 2 days ringing up every single like marketing conference that was happening that year. And I went around and I said, look, if you don't sell all of your conference booths, like I know, like it always looks really shit when you sell out a conference and then you don't sell all of your booths and there's just an empty booth. Like we're a super fun company, like we're already young, we've got absolutely no money, but we've got some kind of fancy looking camera equipment that we can come put down in a booth. And all you have to do is just give me 24 hours notice. Like if you ring me up 24 hours before and say, I have an empty booth, you can have it. I'll make you a free video for the conference. So it's like win, 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 win for you. And cool, we get a free booth. And then lo and behold, like 4 days after we moved to London, one of these conferences rang me up and was like, we've got an £8,000 booth for you. You can have it for free. We'd love a video. And just someone's filled the space. And I was like, sick. And we got our first we only got one client from that conference of like 3 days of collecting like 200 business cards. But that client was really significant for us. And they were like a FTSE 100 company in the UK, you know, and they had sort of proper budgets and all the rest of it. And they were a big part of that kind of stage of growth. So little things like that, like running out to networking events, like doing a lot of outbound sales calls, all that sort of stuff. Like that worked, but it's so hours and hours intensive. And it's something that, in my opinion, only really works well if you're the founder or if you're one of the people running the business, because people want to speak to you and are excited to speak to you. But if so-and-so sales exec calls you and they're like, hey, I just wants to grab 5 minutes of your time and just whatever, like people just aren't nearly as interested, I think. So, you know, there are companies that build off the back of that approach, and I'm sure that you could have great success with it. But for us, the more time went on, the only sort of scalable option was like paid advertising and SEO and, you know, more organic stuff. So that's what we sort of focus on, and that's what generates most of our new business is Facebook and Instagram advertising.